Welcome to Proud Veteran Outreach. Our commemorative show today is about honoring 9/11, and we are about to show you some very inspirational and emotional presentations. Our show is brought to you by the Proud Foundation and the Vet Centers of Minnesota, located in Brooklyn Park, St. Paul, and Duluth. And our show is dedicated to you, the civilian, and asking you to help us identify the military veterans that are in transition, who more often than not isolate, and that isolation leads to suicide and homelessness and pain that the veterans experience on a daily basis. So we're asking for your help to help us find the isolated vet. We want you to reach out to them. We want you to feel comfortable reaching out to them and offering services, and we will help you provide those services. So to start our commemorative show today honoring 9/11, we are going to show you a 7-minute video on what it is like to go to war after 9/11. So please watch this segment.
Come back from war and you're expected to be around everybody who's happy and smiling when you're just a ball of anger. In 2006, I decided I wanted to be a cop. Because of that police officer who took care of me that night that my mom crashed a snowmobile. He was such a good person to me, and he was so nice to me, and he made me feel better. He came and checked on me multiple times afterwards. I liked the fact that he was there to protect me, and I felt that protection from him. You know, my fastest route to becoming a cop would be to join the military, and in my thoughts, I would be a cop in the military and then get out and become a cop here. I was a cop at 19. I got back to my first duty station, and I didn't even do my job before they sent me on my first deployment. And we were part of the Scorpion 1-5, and so we went out and our job was to do route clearance. My whole job was to find the bombs before they blew up. If I didn't find those bombs, it's pretty obvious what happens. I was the lead gunner, so I was the first one in charge. So I was 20 years old. My whole job was to make sure my team didn't die. There was a lot of stressful days out there, a lot of times where I just sit there and watch my teammates walk out to check to make sure something wasn't an IED, knowing that there could be secondaries, knowing that they could step on a mine any second. 6 months straight of literally looking for bombs, and your heightened sense of awareness is up. You're in the fight or flight mode constantly. You get back from deployment, and everybody's happy. You know, everybody's just happy you're home. Everybody's living their life, and you get back and you just hate it. You hate it. Every single second of being home, I hated when I was in the military, because I kept thinking about, I have people overseas and I'm here. I don't want to be here. I want to be over there. And you become focused on being deployed, because you know when you're overseas, you have a mission, and the mission that you have is life or death. And if you don't do it correctly, people die. But when you're at home, you feel like you're doing nothing. You feel like you're wasting your life. So I went back 9 months later to Iraq, in northern Iraq. That deployment was rough for me because I was law enforcement. So I would drive around and we'd have to respond to certain calls. And there was a lot of suicides on that deployment. There's one I'll never forget. We got a call for a possible suicide, and we drove out, and I was the first one there. And I walked in the room, and a young soldier he was like in his early 20s. He laid down on his bed, got dressed for work, and he put his M16 on his chest, and he shot himself through the bottom of the mouth. And he blew off about half of his head, but he was still alive. He was still moving, he was breathing, and he was calling out for help as much as he could because he couldn't move his mouth. So I walked up, no clue what to do in that situation. Luckily, 2 firefighters came in right after I did, and they start working on him. And I asked them, what do I do? And the Joe just grabbed my hand. So I just sat there and waited for him to die, because that's all we could do. So he passed, and I'll never forget, ripping his grip off my hand because it was so tight. I couldn't get it off, and I had to have these guys help me peel his hand off. That was rough. A lot of times in the military, you tend to bury things, and I would tell you, burying your issues, burying your traumas is not the way to go, because that will haunt you. I was very angry for a long time. I hated just about everybody. The only people I thought I could trust and lean on were my brothers, people in the military, people I served with. That hate overtook me, and it got me to the point where I resorted to, try to end my own life. I think it was through my own personal journey where I decided to look inside myself, find out who I am and who I want to be. There's a lot of points in my life where I didn't feel like that. So I decided to take charge of my life, and I decided to change. And overall through my journey, people have disconnected, and we need to connect. I think until people start connecting more, nothing's going to get better. A conversation literally can change anybody's perspective, or it can at least make you or bring you closer to that person, as long as you have an open mind and you don't judge people for what their opinions are. Just get together and talk to people. Talking to your brothers, talking to your neighbors, talking to your family, talking to everybody. The only way you improve any situation, sit down and talk about it. If we don't get down to the level of somebody who is at that point of suicide or is suffering severely with PTSD, if I don't get down to their level and go back to those points that I've been, where I've been at my darkest times, I can bring myself to those dark times with them, because I know how to get out now. And so every veteran that I talk to who is at that point, they can rely on me to get down there with them. I can be in that situation with them, and I can help them get out. And through helping them get out, I feel successful. So that got me thinking about, what's wrong with the whole therapy system. So some of the problems I started noticing in the veteran community throughout myself and talking to other veterans is we have no mission, we have lack of community, we have issues with depression, and we have, PTSD obviously is a huge issue, but there's not enough programs to help. And through my healing process, I developed Warrior's Next Adventure. So my main focus is finding veterans who are suffering from PTSD, severe depression, suicidal thoughts, anything like that, getting together with them and talking to them. And through our conversations and having them talk about their traumas, through what I've been through, starting Warrior's Next Adventure has given me a chance to share my traumas, to talk about my issues, to share my experiences, and it's healing. I personally have felt better ever since I've started Warrior's Next Adventure than I ever have. I feel like I have a mission, I feel like I have responsibility, and I feel like I have something to offer. So through helping veterans, I help myself. I'm greedy in that part. I like to get down to that level, and I like to help them build themselves back up, because seeing somebody turn into the best version of themselves is what I'm addicted to doing. So I just want to do my best to help veterans get to that point.
Okay, thank you for watching that. And today we have as our guest Nick Rahn from Warrior's Next Adventure.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
very good. Nick, your experience in that video was remarkable. Your story is remarkable.
Thank you.
And we want to go a little bit deeper into it. I'm expecting that this is going to be an emotional show for me, so I can't imagine what it's going to be like for you. Would you do the honors and tell us what your civilian work is? Because your military life, you transitioned well after some hiccups, so.
Yeah, the first year after getting out, I struggled pretty tremendously with alcoholism and many other issues that many veterans have when they get out of the military. Luckily, I was able to find a job as a 911 dispatcher. And my experiences overseas, I believe I was able to keep extremely calm in a lot of different situations because, mainly because I'm sitting in a chair and I'm not getting shot at, so it's a little easier to...
So what was your experience overseas? What was your MOS?
I was Air Force Security Forces, and for those of you who don't know, it's like being a cop, but also, people don't like to say this, but it's somewhat infantry as well. So our job is to protect the assets on the base, and in order to do that, we have to go outside the base as well. So what we would do is we would have a certain area outside the base that we would drive around. We would do what's called route clearance. So we would drive up and down the main roads, and I was the lead gunner for about 6 months on a convoy team. Our job was to find IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices, just bombs. And our job was to find them before any important convoys were to go through. So what I would do is stop the convoys, we'd go out, we'd search for the bombs, and we would call EOD, which is called Explosive Ordnance Disposal. They would come out and get rid of the bombs for us. So as you could tell, that was pretty stressful, being 20 years old, and that was my main job. I had to grow up really fast.
And you mentioned that what inspired you, or what at least influenced you, was the experience of what happened at 9/11. That inspired you to serve.
Yeah, I mean, everybody experienced 9/11 in their own way. I was in 8th grade. I remember coming into my homeroom and I was watching the news report, and I was angry. I was upset. I didn't know what to think. I was young, but that actually inspired me and a lot of my friends who are veterans, to join the military, to fight back, to maybe get some sort of closure, and a lot of us ended up going into the military to try to just honor the people who died.
And what was the mindset or the experience? Because you were in Iran and Iraq, or what were your experiences? What wars did you fight?
I actually, my first, you call it a TDY, because I went to Qatar for my first one.
Right.
We had a pool, and we had Chili's by the pool side, so it was okay.
Yeah.
But my second deployment was in Iraq, and I was a 50 cal gunner, doing the area security.
Yeah.
My second deployment was in northern Iraq. We were law enforcement, which that one kind of hit home. As I talked about in the video, there was a young soldier who ended up committing suicide, and I was the first on scene, and he was still alive when I got there. He had laid down and he shot himself with an M16 through the bottom of the mouth, and he was still alive, even though he was missing half of his skull. He ended up dying, but before he died, he grabbed my hand, and I sat there with him until he died. We got mortared every single day. There was a few days here and there where we wouldn't, but almost every single day you'd be sitting there and you just hear a mortar coming in, you get attacked. Eventually you get to the point where it doesn't really faze you anymore, which that's not the correct way to respond when you're getting attacked. And then 2011, 2012, I ended up going to Afghanistan doing convoys again as a 50 cal gunner.
So while you're there, you grow comfortable, so to speak, with the idea that this is your home, this is your domain, this is your environment. And when you come home, you're not feeling comfortable because this is not what you're used to. Is that what your experience was?
Absolutely. When you deploy as often as I did, I was in for 6 years, and I spent a little over 2 years overseas. And that's not to mention all the training that I had to do before deployments.
Yeah.
War was the only thing that I knew at the time. I did not like being home, mainly for the fact that I know that I had other, military, my brothers and sisters are overseas, and I'm at home eating a pizza, drinking a beer. And I didn't like that part of me. I wanted to just go back overseas. I didn't want to be around my family. I didn't want to be around home. The only thing I wanted to do was go overseas, and I wanted to be with my brothers because it was simpler over there.
So you transition, you come back home to civilian life, and you're not feeling comfortable at all. And so you feel that you're not in the proper environment, so you actually attempted to commit suicide.
Yes, I secluded myself quite a bit, and it got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore.
Right.
And I went out to the Boundary Waters for 5 days by myself, and the point of that trip was to enjoy my last 5 days on the planet. And that 5th day, I sat down on a rock in the middle of an island, and I decided I had enough, and I couldn't handle it anymore. and I pulled the trigger. Luckily, I had a weapons malfunction. The primer did not go off, so the round was a dud. And I remember taking the magazine out and looking at the round and just staring at the primer, wondering why it didn't go off. So I decided to put the magazine back in, and I shot off the rest of the 19 rounds that I had into the lake, and I decided, never again. I'm going to find out why I'm still here. I'm going to find out what my purpose is in life.
And that purpose transitioned into what you came back into civilian life, took on a 911 job. How did you find that job, and how did you grow to feel comfortable in that job, or with your experiences?
Initially, I wanted to be a cop.
Okay.
And so I figured one of the best things for me to do is get a job in dispatch to at least see that side of the police world.
Yeah.
And I ended up growing to love it. People would call in that were suicidal, and I would get a chance to counsel them. I would get a chance to make them feel happier. The whole point of my job as a 911 dispatcher is to make people feel happier than they were when they first called me. And I love that feeling. It's a greedy feeling for me.
Yeah.
Because I really like to help improve people's lives.
Well, it's also good for the person on the other end as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you had a unique experience that motivated you to start Warriors Next Adventures. What was that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it was a single event, but I had a specific call that I ended up getting a Chief's Accommodation Award for. A woman had called 911 saying that she was going to kill herself. And we have cameras, and I actually pulled up her GPS off of her cell phone, and I pulled her up on camera, and I found her standing on a bridge. I ended up talking to her for about 45 minutes. I ended up finding out that she was a veteran. She served in the Army. She had some traumas that she had not taken care of. She had not seen counseling. She had not sought help for.
Was she deployed?
She was.
Okay.
She ended up losing her house. She was living in her car at the time. So it was very easy for me to connect to her.
So the homelessness had sunk in too.
Yes. So because
Did she have children by chance?
I believe she said she had a son.
Okay.
But because of my experience with my attempted suicide, I knew exactly where she was. I knew
Okay.
how she was feeling. And so I connected with her very easily, and it ended up getting to the point where I got her to get down off of that bridge. And I sent my troopers their information, or the information for the VA Crisis Center, the mental health line, and my personal phone number to try to get her to call me. You know, if there's anything that I can do, if she's ever feeling like that again, call me and let's talk about it. Let's get together and we can figure out what we can do to improve the situation.
So this led you to starting the Warriors Next Adventure. What you're using, physical therapy, or what are you calling that therapy?
Recreational
therapy. Thank
so
you.
2018, I ended up doing a documentary shooting waterfalls. And we did a lot of hiking, and we got deep inside some of these waterfalls. I was actually rappelling off of waterfalls, getting better angles, and I started to realize, you know, this is an amazing form of therapy. I was also a jiu-jitsu competitor as well as an MMA fighter. So all of those are forms of
And
recreational
for those
therapy.
who don't know, what is jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu is a ground fighting technique. A lot of people know who the Gracies are. There's jiu-jitsu gyms all over the world. It's mainly ground fighting, taking people down to the ground and using submissions.
Okay.
So using blood chokes, using joint manipulation to subdue your opponent without causing any extreme harm.
Yeah.
Whereas boxing, you can get severe brain trauma.
Right.
Mixed martial arts, you can get knocked out. Kind of like I had personally.
But you're doing this as a competition, not as a offensive weapon of some sort.
It's mainly for self-defense.
Yeah, okay.
But what it does for you is it gives you some sort of calm. I feel much more calm now that I train jiu-jitsu. I've taken some time off because I ended up getting a TBI in a MMA fight last year, which caused me to quit martial arts. But I still do train jiu-jitsu occasionally. I'm actually going to start up here, hopefully within the next month. But what it does for me personally is you're having problems with your wife, you're having problems with your car. You can't think about that when somebody's trying to choke you out because you're going to get choked out. So you have to focus on other things. You have to focus on what's happening. And it forces you to be in the present.
So let's talk about the services that Warriors Next Adventure does and what its mission is and purpose, because it seems to me that you're doing a lot of outreach, connecting with a lot of people, not just in the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And it's working for you. How old is the organization?
I just started in April. It's been a thought in my head
April of 2019?
Yes, sir.
And you're already a nonprofit?
Yes, I ended up taking this amazing trip to Hawaii.
Yeah.
I ended up going out for 8 days, and I hiked 46 miles. I ended up climbing 3 mountains. I saw some amazing things. I slept on the beach under the stars, and I was really thinking about what I could do with this nonprofit, trying to figure out what I can do to help veterans. And I realized that all of these things that I've been doing with mixed martial arts, with jiu-jitsu, with mountain climbing, rock climbing, hiking to waterfalls, recreational therapy has been one of the most healing things for me. And so what I'm trying to do is share my experience with other veterans. So I'm going around climbing the highest point in all 50 states, and I'm taking veterans with me. And what we're doing is we're talking to each other. We're rebuilding that camaraderie that we used to have in the military, and we're rebuilding community throughout the veteran community.
So remarkably, you have a network of over 1,000 people in your network so far, and that's amazing in any circle.
Yeah,
to be able to develop a community at large in such a short period of time. How did you do that?
Just talking to people, reaching out, looking for people that are hurting, looking for people that are suffering, and I just reach out and say, hey, how are you? Are you feeling okay? Is there something that you want to talk about? And I reach out, and what I do is I make sure that I'm vulnerable. I try to be as vulnerable as possible to other people to let them know, look, I'm putting myself out there. You can too, and it's healing.
And you're using a podcast and Facebook or social media. What are your tools there?
The majority of what I do is on Facebook because it's pretty easily accessible. It's easy to access people, talk to people all across the country.
The population is big.
Oh, exactly. So I have probably 14 to 20 groups that I'm in, and we all help each other in that sense. It's not all veterans. It's a lot of civilians as well. A lot of it is, we get together and we talk. We make fun of each other, we laugh, we have fun together. We go live sometimes, and what we'll do is we'll have 2 people talking live, and we just joke around and have fun with each other. And then I ended up starting a podcast as well. What I do is I find veterans who are doing amazing things, and I interview them. And I do about an hour-long podcast, and we just chat. So next year, one of the things that I'm planning on doing, I'm actually planning on doing a 30-day road trip around the United States, interviewing people who train jiu-jitsu, veterans who train jiu-jitsu, and who have used jiu-jitsu to help them heal from PTSD.
Well, there's 300 vet centers around the country, so you can use those vet centers to do outreach.
Exactly.
To all of those veterans and find out where those jiu-jitsu people are.
Well, again, Facebook is extremely helpful. There's a couple groups that I'm a part of, and I reached out, hey, who are my veterans who train jiu-jitsu and where are you at? So what I have already compiled a huge list. I still need a few other states, but through talking to you, it's made me realize that, there is a slight gap between the post 9/11 and pre 9/11 veterans, and this is one way we can all get together.
Yeah, we don't need separation. We need inclusion.
Exactly.
And you've agreed to help us relate the millennial veterans to the baby boomer veterans.
Exactly. We need to unite somehow.
And hopefully the Legion Post will help us create that bond.
I'll do whatever I can.
Okay, so let's talk further about the programs that the Warriors Next Adventures, what you want to do. I know you want to do a gala. We can talk about that gala coming up. But let's first talk about your programs that will attract other people. So are you looking just for military veterans, or are you looking for civilians to participate with you?
Well, the main thing, anything that's financed, like that has to be funded, is mainly for veterans. However, I never tell civilians that they cannot come with. Whenever we go climb a mountain, I always release the date and time that we're going to be climbing. So anybody can come out and join us, and they can hike with us. We can all get together and we can chat. Because one of the main things is veterans feel separated from civilian society. Not all, but the majority. It's hard for us to communicate with each other. it's hard for us to connect. So on a hike like this, you know, having civilians hear veterans tell their stories and talk about, you know, some of their struggles, but also in turn listening to civilians telling their stories as well, because all too often veterans tend to compare, and that's one of the biggest problems. You cannot compare your experience to somebody else's experience. That's just going to cause division.
And are you comfortable being a public speaker, going to speak to organizations? There's a lot of yellow ribbon cities here in the Northwest community. A lot of corporations support yellow ribbon, which is, you know, support for families of active duty people. Are you comfortable going to talk to a Chamber of Commerce place, things like that?
Absolutely. It's something that I've considered. I have to get a little better at public speaking, I think.
No problem.
You know,
Well, this show will help you.
I think this is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Eventually down the road, I would like to do speeches around the country as well, if it's something that people are interested in. Mainly the thing that I want to put forth towards veterans is resilience. You know, we're taught resilience in the military through basic training. We're taught to push through. We're taught to, you know, keep moving forward. And for some reason, a lot of veterans, when they get out of the military or when they're suffering from PTSD, they kind of lose that and they give up, and they end up, like I did back in 2015, they end up attempting suicide.
So there is a big soapbox available to you called the Mall of America. It's a yellow ribbon company.
Okay.
And they do have a memorial for the Flight 93 that was taken down in Pennsylvania during 9/11. And I forget the guy's name, but the memorial is to him, and he is a St. Paul native.
Okay.
So there is a memorial at the Mall of America. And as I said, they're a yellow ribbon company, so they are very receptive to bringing your platform and program there. And it would be even more interesting to do some jiu-jitsu experiences there with other military veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just a blue belt, so I can't really go out and represent that, but there are plenty of black belts who are veterans.
Well,
so
listen,
we need to team up with some
I'm
people.
a no belt. So and there is an event coming up that I want you to be aware of that the mall puts on every December,
Okay.
which is called Holiday for Heroes. So all of the vet organizations that want to present themselves and their families, the mall shuts down and has the amusement rides just for veteran families.
Okay.
So we'll get you the details of that and we'll put it on the show.
I will take it.
So very good. So thank you very much for coming on to
Yeah,
the show.
thanks. I appreciate it.
This is, again, an honor to 9/11 for us. So this will be shared equally across the community here.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
I appreciate it.